Thing and eggs, by the way. I'm kind of upset. I'm like, I want someone else. Nope.
We
I can
work in a shared
Photoshop you some
space.
stuff. Hey, Colo Chip's here.
Indeed.
We have to start out with him because I don't want to take up too much of his time if you
No,
don't want to be here.
absolutely. Absolutely. Well, none of
Hey,
us really
Chip.
want to be
I
here.
mean,
We'd
I like
love
being
to be
here.
here.
This is fun. But I know
Hey
Chip's a
guys.
busy man. Hey, Chip.
Wow. I didn't realize we had so many people come to office hours.
Oh yeah, man, it's a party. We're just getting started.
What is the primary topic you guys are hitting today?
We're going to cover a little bit of OSINT and what your IP address says about you.
Nice. Very nice.
But you have
Um,
the main stage this morning.
well, I guess I have two things to pass along. First off, um, just want to let everyone know that Fortify templates have hit our dev server as of this morning. I've spent about 4 hours testing them already and writing up recommendations for the guys on the next set of improvements before it goes on to QA. But for anyone who's waiting on those, which I get feedback from a lot of partners that they are after fortified templates, it is very close to being done. And it's really cool. It's going to do exactly what I would want if I was an MSP, which is to just let me build out a set of templates that apply to different licensing configurations and then just splatter them everywhere and away you go. So we'll definitely build out some basics. It does have a community template section where
Really?
there will be drafts that will be sitting there, and you guys can upload or create your own templates and either offer them to the community or not. Um, so I think it's going to be a pretty cool component.
Excellent.
Um,
Thanks
but
for that
Freaking
update.
awesome, man. That is awesome.
yeah,
I
what's
was
all the
wondering that
dinging, by the
exactly.
way?
Hmm?
Is all the dinging people still jumping in?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, okay, the next thing to talk about, we've had a lot of partners asking after last week what the impact of the Microsoft announced Russia pressure on Office 365 is. Um, I've got a couple things to say about that. The first is that I find it interesting that Microsoft is coming clean and acknowledging that the hack that they offered information about back in January, which started in November, did in fact include more than likely the stealing of current source code and a number of other secret documents inside Microsoft, which add vulnerabilities. One of the articles that I read had a quote from a researcher who said, I'll paraphrase it because I don't remember it exactly. If you guys want to go find it, it's on the register. But the quote was that everyone should now recognize that Microsoft's Office 365 is a serious threat to national security, which I found like a stunning quote to come from a serious researcher. Um, Having said that, we certainly did see and have seen since the end of February, um, and the last time I looked at data was last Friday, the 8th, a significant increase in events, particularly brute force password spray um, and session token events that jumped by about 50% over previous levels. So that's a significant move. And that is seems to be a new normal as far as I can tell um, from briefly looking at data yesterday. I didn't do a deep analysis, but I think that's where we're at. In terms of whether or not this is actually directly connected to the Midnight Blizzard hacking group out of Russia, we definitely cannot conclusively say that. I think everyone on this call is probably well aware that masquerading one's IP in order to obfuscate the origin of any connection to any account is a pretty trivial task. And I would expect that the Russians or any other hacker for that matter are engaged in that pretty regularly. We did do an analysis of geolocation, and ironically, most of the activity still seems to come from China. There are 5 other countries that make up a reasonable percentage. That does include Russia. But the US and China, as the locus of origin, are by far the 2 largest countries that we see this data coming from. So, I'm trained as a computer scientist, and I consider myself a scientist, so I only deal in facts that we can identify. I'm sure that there are people who have resources beyond what we do as a business that might be able to determine origin in different ways. And when I'm saying people, I'm talking, state level actors, NSA, CIA, 3-letter agencies here and around the Five Eyes countries. They can evaluate VPN traffic and get at things that we can't look at to make that determination. So if people are really interested in wanting to follow up on that, I would recommend you seek sources that might have that kind of information truly available. One other data incident to address, and it's unfortunate that this occurred at the same time because it really clouded the data. But on the 7th and 8th, we also saw a massive increase in data around non-interactive sign-ins. That occurred because 2 weeks ago, we introduced a new endpoint, and we were gradually ramping up the connections of that endpoint on all of our partners. And on the 7th, that endpoint was officially released to every single tenant of every single partner. And that caused about a 10x increase in activity coming into SaaS alerts and raw data coming into SaaS alerts that was focused around or contained the phrase non-interactive sign-in. There was a mountain of data that we did not see in our testing of this new endpoint that we're now tracking. And that mountain of data caused an awful lot of new events that were, I wouldn't say miscategorized because they were intended to come in, but we didn't see it in our test data, and we didn't see it in the first 100 or so partners to whom that was attached, or 100 or so tenants, I should say. So our reaction to that was to pretty quickly by Friday evening, put extreme filters on that data so that it would quiet it down until we could create an entire new category of events. For some of you on this call and I see many familiar names and faces that are also on our SASE call, an enhancement request that came to us maybe 4 or 5 months ago, could be more actually, asked us to dig in more diligently and create more events, not necessarily alerts, but events that would be low level around non-interactive sign-ins, because there were quite a lot of them that weren't showing up in the regular data. So that was the reason that we created this new special purpose endpoint. What we're going to be doing with it when we start releasing those filters again is we'll be collecting that data. Almost all of it will come in as low-level events by default, and we'll be creating a new class of types. So our data is organized into event types. Literally, for those of you who are coders, it's an event.type. And those event.types then have subtypes and descriptions and joint additional descriptions which follow on. We'll be creating at least 5, perhaps 6 new sub-events of the event type non-interactive sign-in. So we're actually breaking this off from the normal identity and access management sign-in category and giving it its own attention, because we've discovered there's a lot of interesting things there that, quite frankly, we didn't know until we started seeing all the data coming in from all of you. Okay, so that's the set of announcements, Ben, that I wanted to share with the group. I know you felt that the group would have a lot of questions about those two topics. So we can take any questions before we plow on.
Hey, Charles, this is Roman from Nero. Yep, we definitely seen a tenfold, if not more, increase of alerts, as you mentioned, and it started with MFA unauthorized. Is that something you guys noticed across the board, or was that something for our tenant specifically?
No, that we did notice that across the board, and so I can get into the specifics of that one. Um, that definitely came as part of this new endpoint that we derived. And by the way, when we say endpoint, we're not necessarily referring to a new API endpoint in Microsoft. We're referring to endpoints for our own internal API that we use to target specific activities in the Microsoft or Google or whatever universe. So I just want to clarify that. What we discovered when we sort of released the hounds, Roman, on that and turned this new new code loose on all tenants is that the first test group, our own test group of Microsoft clients and the early partners or early customer tenants that we used were not users of Entra or Intune device joining into Azure AD. And as it turns out, when a user logs a Windows device into a Windows 10 or 11 device into Azure AD, there is no MFA sign-on, and it's hard coded into Microsoft that that's the way it works. Confusingly, Microsoft adds two statements in the JSON that comes back in the full log. The first is they call it an MFA failure, even though it's expected to be an MFA failure because there's no MFA prompting. And the second is they call it a conditional access violation, even though there's no conditional access policy evaluation on most of those events. We actually suspect that there could be conditional access policies applied. We just didn't see any in the policy environments. We have to do some more research to see if Microsoft, and actually, I expect you guys might be able to answer this because you're heavier Microsoft users than we are in terms of the day-to-day stuff. We do everything with research, and you guys have the hands-on in the weeds experience. What I'm interested in knowing and what our team is researching now is whether or not conditional access policies can be set up in such a way that when a device signs in, you can apply the same geographic policies to it as you would a user account. I suspect the answer to that is yes. We haven't found that in the data yet, but that's what we'll be looking for to narrow down the what we call Cat V conditional access policy violations that were also present in those events. So Roman, I hope that helps answer your question.
Yes, for sure. Thanks a lot.
Hey, Charles, let me ask this question, if I may. We were severely affected when you guys deployed the non-interactive login alerts. What is actually causing those non-interactive alerts? Like I myself, right, sitting here working, I log in, and 2FA, the whole thing. My browser, I open up my browser, and my browser in the logs fails 5 non-interactive logins. And of course, using respond rules, your AI automatically locked my account. And Andy, if I cut in on you, I apologize, sir. And it doesn't do it for every single person, but it did happen across every single one of our tenants. And it was 2 people here, 1 person there, 3 people here. We put in multiple tickets with you guys, which I guess is where, why you guys are here now, talking about this. I guess my initial feedback would be, if you're going to do stuff like that might have long-reaching tentacles and problematic outcomes, please give us a heads up, like in advance, to maybe put it in alert only mode to start with, because the amount of man hours that we spent, and I'm sure there are a lot of people on this call that had the same exact problem and experienced the same exact really bad day the other day when you guys launched this, was extraordinarily painful.
Yeah, Steve, thank you for that question, and it's a very good one. And I definitely acknowledge and appreciate your statement and the amount of effort that decision on our part to release that forward, put on everyone, yourself included. So what causes the interactive sign-ins? And again, we've always seen them in a limited way, but our partners have asked us many times, we think that there's a lot more of this going on. There's a lot more interactive sign-in events, and you guys aren't catching enough of them to give us the visibility, which is why we introduced this new endpoint. What causes them are a couple different things. So anytime you've logged into 365 with a browser and you select stay signed in, every time you come back to that same browser and reopen it or open another tab, it causes a non-interactive sign-in event. Every time you open an Outlook installed on a local computer, the local client, it causes a non-interactive sign-in. Every time an Azure AD joined device connects to Azure AD, it causes a non-interactive sign-in. I'm trying to think if there are others. The applications include desktop applications. They include mobile device applications, tablets, literally anything under the sun that gets granted a permanent or semi-permanent token can generate the non-interactive sign-in log or event.
Okay.
And that's why we're breaking it out. We've decided to break these out into, at least five different sub events, so that you guys can individually then, and they'll all be built with default severity as low, because they're mostly expected to happen, right? So they'll be default severity low, but by breaking them out into 5 or 6 different unique events, then you guys can use them individually in Respond as you build rules and look for those conditions combined with other conditions, just like all Respond rules are constructed, and create individual IOC patterns that you find useful in your business.
So, how in the browser, to save RAM, right? Like, and I'm sure I'm like everybody else here, and I've got 50 tabs open at any given time. When it puts a tab to sleep, when I click on it to bring it back out of hibernation to go work on something, is that creating also that non-interactive login?
Yep.
Okay, so how would we use this effectively to start with when that's the case? Because like I guess I'm struggling to figure out if power saving mode is creating a non-interactive login. And like for me, I kill all persistent tokens every day. Every morning, 8 a.m., I kill all persistent tokens across all of my tenants. So I have no persistence.
That's
So,
fantastic, Steve. Also very unusual.
well, we do that, well, for many reasons, but and customers don't always love it. But once you explain the security ramifications, it's a big deal. But sleeping tabs is so problematic. I'm not really sure how I would utilize this feature that you brought online without locking out a majority of my customers, and their machines.
Yeah,
So
I can offer an example.
please.
So anytime there's a non-interactive sign-in, well, actually, before the example, I want to ask you a question. When you said you revoke all persistent tokens, do you also revoke machine tokens and application tokens? So people have to re-log into their locally installed Outlook or Excel or whatever else?
Well, every morning, I'm really bad about this, but like I don't lock my machine at the end of the night because it's sitting here in my house. But so every morning I'll start working at 8 o'clock, and at about 8:15, I'm kicked out of Outlook. I'm kicked out of Teams. I'm, all these things, SharePoint,
Right.
OneDrive, everything gets kicked out, and I have to re-authenticate. So
Yep.
I'm not sure if you would call that a Windows token or a machine token or a software token. I'm not exactly sure what you would, quantify that as, but
Well, so I'll ask one more question to quantify it or qualify it. Do you use those applications only in the browser, or do you use native apps on your machine as well?
native apps.
Okay, good. Yeah, so the answer to my question then is yes, you do,
Okay.
which I think is fantastic. I mean, that's the best security posture that you could take. That's what SaaS Alerts does as a company for our own business applications. So I've been preaching that for a long time, and I rarely, hear that people do it because it drives customers up a wall,
Yeah.
as you correctly stated. Okay, now to the example of how one could use this. Since we're going to break these out into individual events when we reactivate this endpoint, this code, you will be able to take that event. Let's say it's a refresh token that has device specific language in it. You could build that into a respond rule that even though it's a low event, if you see that and you also see it on a new device issued to a new device, and you see it from an unfamiliar location, you could then reach a conclusion that you have a significant probability of a compromised account. So that's how you would use these events. You would like all of events in respond, or almost all events in respond. There should be multiple actions that are used to correlate against one another to say, hey, we suspect that this account is compromised because it's behaving in a way that's unusual for the account user, and follows a typical attack pattern that that has become well known to all of us in the security industry. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. I guess I'm going to have to give some thought around how I would really utilize that effectively. I think it would be super helpful if you might write some use cases for us to kind of think about, because I think there's a lot of gotchas there that are problematic.
I agree with that statement. Respond is a very complicated and powerful tool. So, a significant proportion of the support tickets that we handle for partners are helping them sort through what they thought would happen based upon the logic they built in Respond versus what actually happens. And I see Ben just posted, sounds like a good idea for future office hours, I think. And Ben, I was going to suggest the exact same thing. Ben, you and Mike and a couple of the people on our side can get together and write up a series of samples, maybe go over the templates that we have provided in Respond already, and talk about those specifically through the lens of how they should be tweaked depending upon how the partner configures their clients.
Agreed.
Andy, you've had your hand up for quite a while.
I wanted to make sure that you had exhaustion on this because I have what I perceive in evolving language is what I'm describing. You're developing an awareness of the logs in such a form that it is forming complex phrases, sentences, and paragraphs. And there is not a way yet in SaaS alerts, and I'm suggesting this as a way to translate this to a security or compliance policy. having a meta language that allows us to take this information and say, if I wanted to have this compliance standard or this security standard implemented, here are the elements that we need to have, and to be able to formulate that in a respond rule or respond and unify type of thing. Your intimacy with what is coming out of Microsoft is very unique. And it's impossible for us to stay current with you as you move through these things. But to begin to build a language where we could say, these are the effects that I wish to implement, and how does that develop or manifest itself in the SaaS alerts ecosystem, or I should say its integration, that would be very helpful. Giving us
Yeah,
a
I
way
think
to
we try and
translate.
accomplish that with templates in both respond and soon fortify. Um, we're definitely not going to go down the path of creating another standard, like a NIST standard or CISA or
Right.
CIS standard. There's just, I'll be honest with you, it's an economic decision as much as it is anything else. Like, we're trying to keep the cost of SaaS alerts, at anti-malware kind of pricing, and the amount of manpower and team it would create for us to recreate a standard or to go after a new standard
I
is
wasn't
just enormous.
suggesting a standard. I was suggesting, hey, if I'm implementing NIST and I want to undetect, I needed to be able to detect these events because my inventory base is of such. How would I translate that into SaaS alerts? That's
I think
oh,
he's I
go
think
ahead.
he's talking about a mapping.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Map your capabilities to these different federal standards, right,
So
Andy?
we,
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
basically, I'm looking for a way to have taxonomy here, right? What does this represent in SaaS alerts for cloud? Because you are so intimate with what's coming out of Microsoft logs that we're having to process this information. And for example, the discussion you just had about non-interactive logins, that's eye-opening for me.
yeah. So, Andy, we do have a document that we maintain, and partners, it's been sent to partners on request, that maps to either CIS or NIST, wherever possible, all of the events that we cover. I think we're at almost 300 different events that we cover. And we have a document that we maintain that our guys send out as a PDF. We maintain it as an Excel file that has all of those mappings. Um, I think maybe what you're asking for is to translate all those mappings into the user interface in SaaS Alert so that you can,
Or
see
have
if maybe,
ability to take elements of these different mappings and create something powerful with it, right? So that's what you brought out at non-interactive ad logins means I have to now talk on a policy level with a company about here are the effects of this. One option, remove all the tokens, right? Second is,
that best
hey,
option, just ask
yeah,
Steve Cole.
no arguments there,
Yep.
right? But they may not be willing to accept that in a business case for economic reasons, just like you. So now,
Yeah.
what is that? How does that translate out? And what are iterative steps above this that we could begin to implement based on what you have with these log events and policy that we could begin to craft backwards. So I'm trying to say here is that you're giving us capabilities we didn't have, where before policy would dictate into SaaS alerts. Now we're beginning to have potentially SaaS alerts come back and impact policy because of capability.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely identify with what you're saying, which is why we have CIS policies directly tagged um, in Fortify. Um, I'm I, I'm trying to imagine how we would do that with the events just as they are standard. I mean, we could certainly, in the events listing that's in the UI, we could certainly incorporate um, either NIST or CIS controls as as part of that. But the thing is, when it comes to policy and implementing controls, it's not necessarily just that you're monitoring something, it's how
Taking
you're
action.
monitoring it and how you're reacting to it.
Yep, absolutely. And
And
that's where respond is huge in this and
yeah,
unify combined, right?
yeah. Um, so I mean, we'll give that some thought. I mean, we could certainly incorporate those control badges, if you will, those standards into respond in a way that would provide visibility. But in the end, it's still up to
the
Totally agree.
individual partner to determine how they're going to package those elements together to actually comply with a policy. Does that make
What
sense?
yeah, and what I'm conveying is that you're at such a low level in the log. What are the domino ramifications of this coming up so that we have a higher level understanding? Because I'm really not down at that level in my business. And I apparently need to be aware of it and having that communicate up as this would be a procedure or a policy that should be brought up because we now have a visibility into non-interactive logins. It happened a week ago. We weren't aware of this. Now we are. This is, how do we respond to this outside of SaaS alerts with our customer base in policies and procedures?
Sure. Got it.
Charles, Anthony asked me to speak about this, but so I'll just bring this up real quick.
Wait, my Anthony?
Yep, you're Anthony.
How much
Hey,
trouble
if
are you
you're
going to be in when
comfortable.
you're done, Steve?
Oh, no, I'm used to it. So we picked up a new client Friday of last week. They're out in California. To your point, to your initial talking points earlier, they fell victim to the increased spray and well, whatever. I can't say that.
Password spray and or brute force.
Yeah, attack. Fell victim to it. Hackers got into their environment. Sat there, watched for quite some time. Got a copy of an invoice. Figured out who their biggest vendors were. Set up a one-off domain, one character off, shut down their ability to communicate with the AP and AR ladies, in both companies within the tenant, and stole $180,000 from, by being a man in the middle. And we had to come in, get, an IR firm involved. And what we found was they had set up their domain over at GoDaddy, not to throw them under the bus, but good luck to them. But they turn off all the logs, they lower all the security controls below what the defaults coming out of Microsoft are. And they make it impossible to do an incident response. Like the incident response is like, hey, we see traces, we see tracks, but there's no evidence, blah, 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 blah. And next thing you know, you're 20 grand in and you've got no outcomes. But of course, they had no controls at all. So to Andy,
this happened before SaaS alerts, Steve? Can I just clarify that?
Yeah.
Got it.
They had a Comcast firewall and access point. I mean, that was it. They don't anymore. Right. They have, my full stack, but yeah, I mean, it's what the industry is doing and what they're allowed to get away with without having these controls and the tools and the feature sets that SaaS alerts and a variety of other companies bring to the table is immense. And all of us as IT MSPs should be going after every single one of our clients that are all out on GoDaddy and looking at secure scores in Microsoft and talking to customers. I mean, my company's secure score is over 90. I mean,
That's
that's
fantastic.
very rare number to achieve.
Yeah, I mean, first off, your story is a familiar one. We've heard this. We probably hear this once a month from either a new partner or an existing partner that they acquired a customer who had an absolute mess. It's actually kind of been common that SaaS alerts in the environment is what noticed the absolute mess or an ongoing hack. Sounds like you were brought in, way right to boom on this after they'd already spent the money and been burned pretty badly. I definitely agree with your statement that it's almost unconscionable that Microsoft is getting away with keeping most of their security features behind a paywall. As I was going through the Fortify templates this morning, looking at I think we're at 89 or 90 different policies we manage through Fortify right now. most of them are, requiring at least P1 and many of them P2 licensing. And for me, it's really troubling that that's the way these services are sold. Google's the same way. Google, has multiple tiers. Microsoft and Google are really the only game in town when it comes to, online office productivity suite integrated with email. AWS has an offering, but I don't think there's really any traction that's worth talking about there. And they're sold in such a way that security is an afterthought. Go to market and get some stuff out there as cheap as possible first is the primary goal, and then you've got to really pay up. I don't know that that's going to change all that much. The same is true of Salesforce, by the way. Your average Salesforce company with a couple hundred people can't even come close to affording the shield protection that comes along with Salesforce tenants. Dropbox is the same way. Like literally everybody's the same way. Get you in the door cheap. Have a relatively naked system that is susceptible to attack, and just operate under the principle that some enterprise administrator is going to do all of the work himself.
Yep.
The bad side of that is that that's kind of a crummy way to do business. The good side of that is that that's what gives all of you guys an opportunity to drive a lot more value as MSPs, especially as kind of many things about our old model or original model as MSPs are no longer revenue centers for us. So, the security component of it becomes an important part of how we build our businesses as MSPs.
Yep.
So I appreciate that comment. It's spot on. Okay.
I really appreciate that. Very, very deep dive into all of that. Any parting shots at Chip before he has to bounce? Chip, appreciate the time.
Absolutely,
Definitely.
guys. I I thought your office hours was going to be like 2 or 3 people a week. I didn't realize that it had grown to this level. So that's interesting.
It's all credit. It's all credit to our partners. They bring us some really interesting ideas, and Ben is never dull. He's always got something interesting to say.
Yeah.
Enrique had some really cool stuff going on there. Yeah, like
Yeah.
fireworks
What was
parties
that, Enrique? How
there.
do you set
So
off the
that's pretty
fireworks?
cool. I want to be able to do that.
That's an
Apparently
iPhone for you.
it's on the Mac because someone told me, look, yesterday on the call, they're like, look, I can show you I'm on the Mac and they did this. And I'm like, oh, really? I thought it was everyone could do that.
And what do you do
So
to do that?
cool. Just do
Thumbs up.
thumbs up.
Just go like this?
Yeah.
Oh, look at that. He's got stuff coming out of his hand and everything.
Not working for me.
It
If
has
I
to
do
be on.
one thumbs up, you'll get a little thumb flying around.
Yeah, that's because you're on an iPhone.
No.
No, I'm on the Mac.
Are you on the Mac and it's doing it for you? Wow.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Anyway,
That's
well,
neat.
I probably don't need that. That would be distracting for me. Guys, thanks for allowing me to crash your party for a little bit.
Oh, that's just too funny.
Dark storm. Yeah.
We'll see a lot of you on Thursday for the SASE call, and we'll keep you posted as usual on events as they evolve. Take care, everybody.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you. Bye.
All right, bye-bye.
Now we can be crazy.
That's left. Yeah, that's
That's
about it.
left.
That's about it. Yeah. By the way, I'm going to throw a link into the chat if you guys have been following the chat about defederating Google. There's a great subreddit, and a guy's kept some documentation very current there. He makes it pretty darn easy. I haven't had to do it myself, but I've had some good feedback from partners who had some challenges with defederating clients from GoDaddy. So I hope you find that of use.
Would you be good enough to put that in the Discord library reference?
I think Ben would be happy to add that. And yes, we have a library on Discord already, Ben.
I think we should.
I didn't know that we did. I'll have to get with Andy and setting that up.
I like the way you slipped that one in there.
Yeah.
Subtle.
Anthony, you
subtle.
did say that the partners give you great ideas, right? There you go.
Indeed.
Right.
Indeed. Yep. Yeah, you guys challenge us and give us direction on the platform and make us want to bang our heads on the wall some days, but it's always good. It's never dull around here.
Quick question. Any,
Please.
is there any limitation to talk about a different product that I discovered in something they're doing? Or maybe I won't just mention names.
I think that's absolutely fair. I mean, we're often compared to Octiga and MSP Magic when it was alive, and SIP. There's a number of different ways out there, and I've got a lot of partners that don't choose one or the other. They may actually have more than one tool, and so there is overlap. I don't think
So
anybody here
this
is going
one,
to complain about hearing anything new.
taking a totally different approach. We're a checkpoint partner, and they recently, together with Perimeter 81, they acquired Atmosec, I think is the name of the company,
Hmm.
like Atmosec. So now they call it Checkpoint Harmony SaaS. And what they're doing is more of, they're going after the SaaS applications, tokens, and using a different methodology for auto remediation instead of doing it at a user level, kind of more doing it on the back end and how the behaviors worldwide of all the Atmosec customers, what they see and what's expected, what you're giving permissions to. So we deployed it on a customer's environment yesterday, and I immediately saw some stuff and they'll tell you this is critical, but the permissions you grant, I'm the only person in the earth that grants permissions wildly. No one else does. And I just don't know how to read. So when you start seeing this and you're like, when in God's earth did I agree to this? So interesting, different approach as to monitoring SaaS, doing some other different stuff. So I think it could be some good, not that there's not a great vision at SaaS alerts, but maybe an additional approach to how they're seeing it. I was really wowed with what I'm seeing. I'm not saying with all their systems. Just they said give it 2 weeks because we have to go back and learn, and I'm like, well, in 12 hours, I'm already scared. I don't know what.
I
Well,
saw
thank you for that.
somebody brought up one. What was it called? Like Nudge or something? Is that something similar? I thought that was something.
You got me, brother.
What is
Um,
the, I was
Go
going to
ahead.
say, what's the name of the document that we're supposed to ask our account managers for, other
Just
than,
the
hey, I want the mapping document? Is
yeah
that all I need to
the
say?
the
Yeah.
NIST mapping document, and
Thank you.
your account managers know what that. We're talking about that chat. Anybody who's not following chat, um, it's a living document that maps out each of our alerts to either NIST or CIS, depending on the document. I think there's one overall overarching document that covers both. In any case,
Mhm.
be sure to reach out to your account managers because that is a living document. We do try to keep that updated as new alerts are added. As Chip correctly said, we're up to I think 287 on the production environment, and in testing we're pushing 300 right now. So look for more of those to grow as we get deeper into the different alerts and what we can pull out of the different applications.
Anthony, Ben, I would have only learned about this as a result of this office hours, that this existed. How is this, how how do we draw on resources or learn about resources available from SaaS alerts other than being on office hours or the weekly SASE call?
I would say
A
watch this
great
space
question.
when you land on your landing page. Look up at the top right. Every time you
Yeah.
log into the platform, you'll see the updates up at the top right. And I know some people follow those religiously and dive into those. When we keep expanding the platform, that's where they'll hit. Also, our marketing folks are fantastic at kind of giving a distillation once a month. I know it's like, oh, here's our monthly newsletter. And a lot of those go straight in the recycle bin. But there is some content there worth reviewing.
Yeah, that was the thing that I ran into as well, Andy, was being able to disseminate like really important information, much more than just like this is a new feature, like this is something we're seeing in the environment. And that's why me and Anthony wanted to start office hours, also, Discord, but we're always open to suggestions.
Absolutely. Speaking of dissemination, I just put a link in the chat, and it's on our webpage as well. Um, every year we do a distillation of what we see, because we've got this meta view of everything. We see like 4 billion alerts a year. We see who's attacking and the attack methodologies. One of the like the top 3 or 4 alerts that all of you are seeing. And that's about a 20 or 40 page report. I don't remember how big it is this year, but definitely check that out. There's some great stuff for marketing or just straight up for education in the SASI report. So and any feedback on that, we'd love to hear it. Again, our marketers put a marketing team of 2. They put a ton of work into that. So I love to hear what you think about that.
One more thought process for office hours in particular is Enrique raised a few weeks back about the Entra ID and how to begin to leverage this more in respond rules to be able to create a library of concepts, right? As I talk about this mapping from what we can do with respond and unify back into policy, helping us create or understand, not create, understand how these mappings can be combined to be more effective.
Yeah, we're going deeper and deeper into the Entra ID and everything else associated there. So look for more noise on that front. And I'm sure as we get um, more examples that are can be tested, tried and true. I suspect our good friend Mr. Jones will be making more getting techie type videos. And again, there's another source that we've tried to put out there for those of you who are on YouTube. Check out our YouTube channel. Ben has his own playlist going on there of a bunch of really good, hey, I saw this on Reddit. Here's the rule I built to look for this problem sort of thing. And a lot of them are very digestible. It's like 5-minute videos, really easy to get into.
A
So,
great index for Discord then. Link back
yeah.
to the different videos and what their value proposition is.
Yeah, I feel like I'd be going from Discord to YouTube
Yep.
to the Sassy Call to Discord to YouTube. Yeah. So,
But you know what? We have to go in and take what we need at the moment. It's not always learning. It's what do I need at this moment to solve? Or I don't even know what I'm looking at, like what was raised today with the interactive logins or non-interactive logins.
yeah, no, it's a challenge. It's a challenge about knowing and no one. I once had a guy during a job interview ask me about what I was paid to do with the previous firm. And I said, no one's ever paid me to know the answer. I just need to know where to find the answer. That's really what a lot of times what our jobs are. It's like I know somebody who knew that. I've heard about that once, and then I got to go dig it out. That's the hard part. Hey, Stephen, I think you're getting a call.
That's right.
We got a few minutes left here, guys, about another 10, 15 minutes. Anybody have any questions on anything we've gone over, any suggestions or directions? Mr.
I
Resendez.
have a quick question that a customer is hounding me on, and I don't know if it's me configuring SaaS alerts incorrectly or Autotask grouping the tickets. So he gets a ticket that originally started in August of last year, and it gets updated with a recent current alert or something that SaaS alerts generate. And he's like, why am I getting an August 23 ticket with today's event? I'm like, well, if you look at the detail of the ticket, he forwarded me all 8 tickets. I'm like, you could see it starts in August, and the latest issue that happened 2 days ago is being tagged on that same ticket. Not sure if that's something we configure in SaaS alerts or.
I had thought the way it was supposed to work, and Ben, you can check me on this, is that after a ticket is closed for Bob logs in, does something dumb, and you guys work that ticket. When you close that, if Bob repeats that action, that should open up a new ticket for Bob instead of appending to the old one. And I
Okay, no,
believe there's a
they're
setting.
never closed because there are just informational alerts, and maybe that's where the issue comes in.
I think that is, yeah. Yeah.
Just mark it complete, so then you'll create a new ticket.
The thing is, so then I'm better off just not creating, because we're talking in Rocket Cyber, since we implemented, I have 655,000 alerts. So
That's impressive.
Oh shit.
yeah. And that was just implemented when Rocket Cyber came on board, end of the year or whenever it was.
How do you process that?
I don't. Why we're getting the pending tickets. No, so I have just the criticals coming to me, and it opens up a ticket, and Most of them are forwarding rules being created, things like that, change in policy, someone sharing external document. I just have the criticals coming to me, but all the other alerts, I guess, should I just turn them off? They're meant, so I do a lot of co-managed environments. At the end of the day, they're not my responsibility. But if I'm generating noise and no value to them, it is my responsibility. So I wonder what the best approach would be for that.
Developing workflows in Autotask to help populate and or that would be my suggestion.
I suck at Autotask.
Are they low priority events that's populating your system, or are they like mediums?
Let me see these 8 that he sent me.
Because the low ones like file opens, file downloads, they shouldn't even be touching a PSA at all.
Maybe my bad configuration on Autotask on SaaS alerts.
But we can definitely I won't be able to do too much with Rocket Cyber, but I can at least say ours.
One of them's a status medium, another one's a status medium, another one's a status medium, another one's a status medium. So I'm guessing everything's gonna be medium.
Eric noted that in our configurations, on the configuration with the PSA integration on our side, there is a switch you can throw to either append to old tickets or generate new tickets. I'm not sure if that's going to get you exactly what you need, but again, maybe a little workflow in the PSA would, between that switch, take that for a test drive.
Jump into a volcano there.
Or if you want, we can set up some time to kind of look at your logs and see what you're seeing too, and see if there's anything we can do to help.
I would love it.
Sure.
Reach out to your account manager who can get on Ben's calendar and find out when that poor overloaded SOB has a half an hour for you. Stephen, Mr. King asked if we had about I don't know if you've ever looked at an alert on our platform and clicked through the little magnifying glass. There's a ton of properties in there that we do collect from Microsoft and other applications that we don't always that we have yet to allow filtering on. Mr. King, yes, that is a work in progress. We were literally talking about this Monday on getting more granular and some of the other things that we have had partners request. Man, I would love it if I could filter on that field in Respond. So if you have specific needs, again, definitely reach out to your account manager because they can put it in front of the dev team in a way that the dev team can't ignore. But yeah, if you got any use cases, give us a shout. Let us know. We're happy to talk about that. And maybe there's a workaround now. No guarantees, but thanks for bringing that up, Stephen.
And I'll make a note in our system too.
You bet, we'll do. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks, Stephen.
No, yeah, I totally agree. There was a couple of them that we were looking at. It's under like the miscellaneous field. It would be nice to be able to parse out too. So, yeah.
We actually started talking about that in our Discord channel, which Ben was kind enough to put a link in there. I hope you'll join us all there. We're talking about BAV to our OPC as this sort of script kiddie legacy auth hack that we started seeing about 18 months ago, and wanted to get any feedback from any of you folks if you'd seen that. So again, happy to discuss that here. I don't think we're going to get to OS Hint today, Ben. I think we're going to have to I'll put that on a future one. There it is.
I feel so bad too, but I think this was very beneficial.
I hope everyone here has found the time well spent. Absolutely. And as always, if anybody missed the notes at the top, this will be on the YouTube channel shortly. But for those who didn't get the first 3 minutes, Chip was talking about in our Fortify module, templates have moved out of the development world and they're in our troubleshooting world. So they're in the sandbox. We're playing with them and building documentation on those now. I don't want to promise them by the end of the month, but I think Chip really wants to have them in the next week or 2 weeks. So I'd say for you guys who are waiting on templating and Fortify, you're going to see some new stuff there very shortly. Man, this was a rocket, Ben.
That was.
Covered a lot of ground.
Happy.
Covered a lot of ground.
Did we miss anything? Anybody wanted to say anything else? Or
so I had asked for the SaaS alert report, the SASE report, if there was anywhere to white label it. And they said the report wasn't, but you guys were going to try to do maybe a one pager and some tags and things like that to be able to promote it somehow. So I think I don't remember they said Tuesday's call or Thursday's call, probably Thursday's call.
I will follow up with Michelle on that, our
Yeah.
marketing guru, because she's the one
I had
who's
talked to
awesome.
Connor about it. Yeah.
Oh, good. Okay. Yeah. If you're squeaky wheeling to Connor, then she's definitely let Michelle know. But I'll follow up as well for you, Enrique, because that's not the worst idea in the world.
Because I think it's a great report. And I mean, we got to give the credit where it's due, just be able to add a little love for ourselves.
Exactly. And also maybe make it the too long didn't read version. It's a one pager would be lovely.
Correct.
Absolutely. Couple of minutes left here, guys. Anything else we want to cover today? I'll believe that when I see it, Enrique.
I promise next time we'll try to do OSINT, assuming we haven't had any crazy events happening.
Anything more crazy. I want to thank everyone for your time today. This has been, I think, super productive and a lot of good dissemination of information. I look forward to seeing you guys when you can join us on the Thursday calls for that as well. And well, if not, we'll see you in 2 weeks for this next one.
Thank you, guys.
Bye, guys. Love it.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Thanks all. Bye.